Okay, let's begin then. The last session is the panel. I got five top people and me here. I'm not the top one. So let's get to introduce ourselves. Myself, Matt. I'm the CEO of the Blockswap Labs. We work on a few things on the MEV and intents, mostly on the research side, and shape the tools for solvers and builders to make things much more smoother and users to have some safer transactions, right? And it would be great to hear what you guys do in a very brief, and then we can get into other stuff.
Cool. Hey, everyone. My name is Murat. I'm the founder and CEO of Primev, and we're building Mev Commit, which is establishing a peer-to-peer network across all MEV actors to issue credible commitments.
Hi, I'm Simon. I'm a co-founder and CTO of Essential. We're building various components of sort of intent-centric infrastructure. Those are an Ethereum-aligned account abstraction intent-based standard, a DSL for intent expression, and a little bit later on, an intent-centric protocol. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Marcus, founder of Propellerheads, and we are solvers, which means we spend much of our time building routing algorithms and implementing and interfacing with the likes of Essential and all of the AMMs. And our job is to help all of these entities as well in their designs, and in our day job, we solve orders.
Yeah, hi, I'm Artem from 1inch. Like a few words, I guess 1inch is the best aggregator. Here for intents, besides the aggregation, we also have the Fusion, which is intent-based protocol, also limit orders. And about myself, I was like a lead DApp UI developer, basically responsible for the front end. And like last few months, I switched to back, let's say, to the smart contracts. And now, yeah, I'm like blockchain engineer from 1inch. Thanks.
I'm Alex from Cowswap, the actual inventor of intents and the first intent-based protocol in Ethereum, and the one that forced the others to actually start talking about this topic. And we have a different idea about what intents is, and we basically base the aggregator or metadex aggregator on batch auctions, which if you don't know about, I recommend reading because they're awesome.
Right, so I'm gonna do this in a different order. We have two aggregators now, just to becoming more intent people, and then we have problem solver. So for everyone, Propellerheads, protocols gives them, and you trying to make some consensus somewhere, very hard thing to do. And he's trying to connect everyone through P2P, very hard. Failed, but in the past. But let's see how it goes. But let's start with the Cowswap, right? How did your invention come through, if that is an intent as an aggregator, and what is an intent now then?
So I think nothing has changed. The idea was basically the realization that Ethereum is a very complex world, and the more the masses that we want to reach, the less of the technology they need to know. And the whole point was, if we have them sign a message, we could have these specialized parties route and create the transactions for the users. So they can just simply, even though they're creating a market order, in the sense, create a limit order, and from there have a more professional party add the other more complex parts of the transaction, such as, you know, what is the best gas price for including the transaction in the next block, what is the latest new where I'm going to get the best price, etc. And at the beginning it was tough because we were the only ones that were doing this, but with time it's rewarding to see that at least we made the right bet.
So we're talking about the intents are getting more than just a swap, right? We're getting like more expressibility and things like that. And we had a lot of questions from the community, like how to approach an intent. I have a protocol, certain actions are there. We use some of existing solvers, but we want to go more about like, more accessibility. Is there anything that we need to change? So I want to know from Propellerheads, you guys do a lot of solution solvers, right? Is this the intent as a swap, or you, from your part, you see anything more complex things can be done?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
without much heavy lifting from the protocol developers.
so I think that there's already a lot of things being done, and a lot of things are already possible that are not being used widely. So I think Cowswap there has so much more capability than what you see on the surface, right? You have the smart orders, you have the hooks, you have programmable orders that can take any condition. So you can implement stop losses, so you can limit buys, like so much more than what you might think you can do from the user interface. And a lot of these seemingly more complex execution models, they actually decompose in the background back into swaps. And that's the elegant things about swaps, is that many of the things that we think about in financial transactions then decompose into actually very few primitives. And the main one certainly now and for the next years will be swaps. Like if I DCA into a token, it decomposes into swaps. If I leverage up on a yield position, on a lending position, it decomposes into lending and swaps. So swaps is not as limiting as it seems. And getting swaps right, I think there's a lot of ground still to cover. So, for example, Cowswap's feature of batching transactions is still far too little talked about. Like the benefits that you get from having a batch auction, the benefits that you get from peer-to-peer trading instead of going through an AMM are massive. Like imagine you are you're holding an early investment in a token. I guess it's a sad example, but you're trying to sell the tokens, okay? You want to liquidate, you know. You have to pay your investors, or you want to buy a house, whatever. Yeah. So now you have a big stake in a protocol that's not extremely liquid. Now your sell of like maybe 100K is going to push the price down by like 5%. Right? There's no reason necessarily why the price should change down by 5% because you're selling. Like you're not an insider. You're just liquidating. Why should that change the price, the expected price of that token? And it doesn't have to be the case. Like, if I am lucky enough that there is a counterparty who wants to buy these tokens, then we're both better off just matching peer-to-peer at market price. Like, they would have paid 5% more because they would have put the price up. I would have lost 5%. And now we're both gaining 5% if we just trade peer-to-peer. That's essentially what batch auctions
but that's
enable.
a social welfare within that group of people, or when you put that into the block, would that change?
No, you are putting it in the block, right? A batch auction is a subset of building blocks, right? You're building a partial block, and that you then submitting to the block builder. But a batch auction, like a Cowswap batch, is a partial block. And you can extend this model much further.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I'm asking. The social welfare is that subset, right? That's only care about. If you want it expanded to open space.
Oh yeah. So this social welfare from peer-to-peer
Yeah.
extends to many, many other things.
Right.
But it is important that we get swaps right first. And we are still early on swaps.
I like that. Getting the swaps right is the biggest problem now. So that's where we can start. Any takes, guys? You want to add anything? Right.
I guess like I would add that it's true that like the most important primitive right now is swaps. That's also kind of a reflection of the fact that like 95% of like blockchain activity is like DeFi or like DeFi related. Like I think we wish, I think, for a future where more things are done. Like blockchain is used for more things than it is being used for now. Like I think there are exciting use cases that can't be decomposed into swaps. That's what I'm trying to say.
Interesting. Right. What about the 1-inch fusion? You guys always like the fastest one in the game and the aggregator. What's the 1-inch fusion is bringing to the table now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, how to say, the diversity of the space is always good. I just before want to add.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Before, it's like in my mind that we actually have the same problem like with Cowswap, that we have a lot of tooling and features in our smart contracts with like batch auctions, transfer, I don't know, post interaction, like these hooks, and it's kind of we need to expose this more, maybe in Medium articles, maybe on UI as the products. We don't know, but yeah, definitely if there is some developers, like for now, a lot of features just in place, but need to be exposed through the, I mean, some explanation tutorials, etc. Yeah, just what on that. Regarding the fusion, we have slightly different model of, let's say, how solvers are organized, how we send traffic to the resolvers. So am I correct if I say that, let's say, you have more centralized thing that, like, everything send call data to the Cowswap, then you decide who is winning, right? Here, or just...
Do you want the past answer or the current answer? In the past, yes. Right now, no. Right now, actually, the piece, which was called the driver, that was responsible for simulating the call data and then pushing the settlement on chain, is actually being able to run by the solvers now themselves. So they have full submission strategy to do whatever they want, respecting the rules of the batch auction.
Yeah, yeah. So initially, like, we had like this difference that our resolvers compete on chain. We have like the slots, the whitelist, also they like stake tokens to be able to resolve traffics. Initially, we bring this model of the ledger, when you like each resolver have time slot. Also, after the DAO vote, the model was changed. Now, like, we have about 10 resolvers. Yeah, they compete, and the model that we have Dutch auction inside, and in this Dutch auction, so like you start with a price that's higher than the market, then the price slowly decays. For this, we have like a curve with the points. Then we like start higher than market, then try to, like, if we did not feel higher than market, so market goes up, we try to slightly go through the market, like follow the market, and then, okay, looks like market goes down, we need to like still hit the deal, has still to execute, we reached, and we have this ability to customize this, let's say, execution model for different chains, different gas prices, different volumes, definitely. So we, again, try to provide this best service. This is like, I think, kind of innovation here for the intense things that we introduced in the space. Okay, thanks.
So I want to go to you about the commitment of the P2P layer. Could you explain that? How can you do this kind of commitment games in the P2P layer? What you're trying to do here? And it would be great to hear about the more standard that you want to bring, how that will go from step to step, you know, and then we can get some sort of an alignment somewhere, at least not a consensus, but that's the first step as an alignment.
Yeah, thank you. So there's two fundamental pieces that commitments really kind of address. And one is essentially the fact that you have this pipeline of MEV, particularly on layer one, and depending on what actor you are in the pipeline, you have some advantages and disadvantages. Today, the block builders build the entire block. The relay doesn't do much, and the proposer has kind of a monopoly where, you know, they can propose whatever they want. And tomorrow, it's increasingly looking like the relay might have a different role where the block is perhaps built by an entity, maybe the bottom of the block is built by a block builder, the top of the block is appended by the relay, and perhaps an inclusion list is added by the proposer so that you have this kind of amalgamation of a block, for lack of a better term. It's kind of a super block. Now, from a decentralization perspective, this is the direction that Ethereum and, you know, people who are aligned like us want it to go. But it poses some challenges.
What's the benefits of you putting 3 slices?
Yeah, so you know, the benefits is decentralization, right? The block builder who's building the entire block today can censor your transaction. But if tomorrow it has to do what the relay appends, and then, you know, the inclusion list has to come in, they don't have full control on the block, so they can't really censor your transaction. So you have better censorship resistance, and then, you know, better robustness for the security of the network. Well, they don't have the power anymore to censor it, right? So they can only build such portion of the block, and then the rest of the block is built by somebody else. And chances are, if you have enough actors, you know, you're not going to be censored by everyone, right? So that's kind of the motive there. So one, you want, and then the second kind of disadvantage of the scheme today is that each of the actors has a lot of say and they can vertically integrate by becoming also some of the other actors to kind of monopolize things for themselves. So you're an integrated searcher builder, you have some advantages that neutral builders don't. But really we want people that are more neutral to likely run some infrastructure such that they won't censor things or they won't skew things their way. So in order to kind of facilitate or get rid of some of these systemic inefficiencies, you need something where you can kind of connect people together. Like if a searcher can act as a builder through an intermediary software, such as a P2P network, and then that builder can also have searcher powers by working with that searcher, you actually have a more robust, more decentralized, more censorship-resistant system than having one searcher builder kind of dominate everybody else who does not have those capabilities. So you need these coordination layers in order to facilitate these in an increasingly decentralized and an increasingly complex transaction lifecycle. And we believe intense platforms, we believe protocols like Cowswap and 1inch, we believe solvers like Propellerheads will want to communicate with each other through such mediums. We believe there will be other mediums than the peer-to-peer network Mev Commit establishes, but these will be important pieces of the infrastructure for tomorrow's world.
From a market take, right? You have this kind of now splitted ended agents. Let's say you have builder, you have top of the block auction, and then you have proposers, inclusion list. Then you're giving everyone just like slots. What if a market like in the futures, that kind of a simple market-oriented things? How much efficiency this has against that one?
So the goal, ultimately, something centralized is just going to be more efficient, right? Coinbase will always give you the best trade execution because they will give you an API, response as soon as you submit something. It'll get executed almost immediately, etc. So the goal is to get closer to that in decentralized systems, such that we can have the positives of the decentralized systems of decentralization itself, censorship resistance, and all of these kinds of things, while having a similar to centralized user experience to some degree. Like if you're a high frequency trader and you're submitting lots and lots of trades, you're able to get a pretty good sense about what's happening with those trades from the exchange that you're dealing with. You're not able to get that sense from blockchains, particularly through these now emerging sealed bid auctions and sealed auctions or private auctions, where you're just sending some stuff to a block builder and hoping it lands on chain. So the goal is to get that experience closer to the TradFi world. The big kind of elephant in the room here is TradFi has CeFi has the 3x the liquidity of DeFi. They don't, maybe they don't have as much activity or whatever it is, but they have 3x the liquidity. So in order for that liquidity to come on chain and the experience to be better on chain, for you to get better prices, for you to have a better UX, we need some of these things that CeFi provides. And we need these, high frequency trading firms and other MEV firms that are actually bringing that liquidity on chain to feel more comfortable trading on chain and give them the tools they need. And some of those tools are coordination tools.
Anyone has to take? How do you think, from your part, Essentials, the standards will improve, the protocols going to interact with this very adversarial environment, where you're going to include the CeFi guys giving a seat permanently somehow, it's, in a good way, but how do you think all this kind of standards will play out?
I mean, I guess just briefly on that last point, I think when it comes to decentralization, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. If people care about decentralization, and I think we all think that they should care about decentralization, and that's why we're here. Then they should also care about decentralization of liquidity and where their orders are going. But that's maybe a philosophical discussion for another day.
At the end of the day, yes, we're saying that it's all about that we are part of an ethos, right? Yes, the CeFi guys are here, but here we are for a greater cause. So there should be some space for that one, for every discussions.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think whether people should use a decentralized solution or a centralized solution, you can only really have that debate once you actually have a solution on both sides. And we're still at a point with at least intents in the general case that we don't have that yet, which is sort of why we're building what we're building. So the question was about the intent standard that we're building.
Yeah,
right?
we're still in the intents of Google Slides. That's not the case. So just want to know how the standards actually can change it to more better definitions.
Yeah. So the intent standard that we're building, I guess it has like three properties that I think make it stand out. So like I mentioned, is that it's like general purpose. Like you can't get away from the criticism of, oh, this is just limit orders. If it's just like limit orders, like you have to go beyond that and be able to serve up a general purpose solution for whatever use cases users may have today or in the future. And that is supported. The second property, I guess, of the standard is that like it's designed in such a way that would be familiar to anybody who comes from like the account abstraction community and is kind of onboarding into that space. I think that too is it's a fantastic initiative, but it's another one that's kind of like slow on the uptake. We would like to kind of solve intents and account abstraction like in one go, because I think that they both have like the combination of the two is probably more powerful than the sum of the parts. And then the third point is that it's a standard. So like today, you have, Cowswap, Uniswap X, One Fusion, and kind of things are factored in a sense that you have applications, and then each one has like an intent layer sitting on top of them. We would like to factor out the intent layer and have it be a standard that is adopted, so that, in a sense, like a user is already, like when a user goes to Uniswap X, they're kind of implicitly expressing a preference to deal only with the solvers that are active on Uniswap X. And I don't know whether that introduces bias into the solver set that you're dealing with. I don't know if that is a good representation of solvers like in general. But to us, it just makes more sense to kind of refactor the architecture a little differently and just have general purpose intents with solvers.
So end of the day, most of this on-chain dexes will be depends on attracting more solvers in the intent-centric world.
Yeah. More solvers is always better. Maybe not for solvers, but for users.
What the solver says about this?
I think the focusing on solving the same intents and competing on a single parameter, which today is like price or quoted price, it's not execution price, it's quoted price, is very limiting, and it's quite short term in thinking. I think that the space of solving is so diverse and will expand so much with more general standards that solvers will diversify not only in types of intents that they solve, but also in the types of services that they can offer around those intents. And that is a space that's completely open still. I think today, almost all solvers, there are some exceptions, they only do swaps and they only optimize for price. They don't optimize for actual settlement guarantees, for example. They don't optimize for speed. They don't optimize for quote to settlement ratio, because what really matters is the executed price, not the quoted price. And this is just within the swaps. But outside, breaking out of the boundaries of a single block, breaking out of the boundaries of just one token that you swap into, there's an endless list of features that solvers can develop and offer independent of the layers, or maybe independent of aggregators as well. And I think that is the really interesting question, is like in which ways do solvers differentiate outside of just optimizing the quote. I think that's really just the starting point. And focusing on the discussion, like, will that commoditize? Yeah, most likely yes. But the really interesting parts, they start from there.
Would we get to somewhere near future, like in a very generalized way, some sort of refunds will come to a normal user using an AA, then because that money is also could be useful for other trades, and in later stages, like you get some refunds from TransferWise, after doing some transfers, like in a 2-3 weeks, like, oh, we saved some money on the other side of LP, here it is, sprinkling some £20 or something like that. That was interesting. Are we going towards some user-centric world where everyone has to provide some value back?
I think refunds are a broken paradigm.
Right.
I think that's you're trying to like fix the problem after you caused it. No, you should just.
I'm not talking about the back running. I'm talking about like being in the long run. You will have some sort of more customers comes to you as a solver, because you
Oh.
will, give some rebates and things like
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely, I think that's going to happen. Like on centralized exchanges, you get lower fees if you trade more. That's definitely going to happen.
Actually, really, your point actually makes a lot of sense that they took the cost. So, like, with this question, if they gave a better price to begin with, then they would attract all of that order flow. So they don't actually need to do a refund. So I would love to see more across the ecosystem around this ethos where, we actually get them the efficient price and everything, so that we don't have to figure out who owes who money at the end of the day.
But that's already happening today. Like if you use a solver, like for example, if you use Propellerswap, there's no backgrounds. You can check it on chain. Like there are no backgrounds because the intent was efficiently solved, and by definition, that doesn't leave a unequal market price enough for an arbitrage in the market.
That's great. I think we may need to kind of change the narrative to emphasize that a little more because, to the end user, it's like, oh, I got a rebate from here, great. And they're not aware that, the product over here is just more efficient, so you don't even need the rebate, right? So it might be an education problem.
You need to be screwed first before you can get a rebate.
There's an old Turkish saying, I was born in Istanbul, but I'll save it for another time. But it has to do with how your mustache forms after, you've had to kind of deal with a lot of things. But maybe some Turkish people can understand in the audience.
But just to add a little bit, that's the whole point of Cowswap in a sense, because instead of just giving you the rebate, we optimize, like Marcus said, to give a better price, and that's kind of like your $20 that you get for transfers wise. And now actually, after launching MEV Blocker RPC, a lot of people are confused because it's kind of the temptation of, oh, but I get a rebate with MEV Blocker. Why should I use Cowswap? But the point is that what Marcus said, right? In order to create the rebate, means that you're not getting the best price. And within that rebate, you're still not getting 100% because the error has already been made. Someone just is trying to diminish the damage of your transaction versus with Cowswap or with a DApp that works in the, in the intent from the user point of view. Then you can actually fix the issue before it actually hits the chain, before the transaction has been created.
All right. So, what's the biggest takeaway so far from Devconnect Istanbul, each of you?
For me, it's the emergence of different approaches, and it really kind of shows the decentralized nature of the ecosystem. And I think there's there's overlapping areas between, what all of us are doing here, right? But we're all here, we're all mostly around the same ethos, and we're trying to solve these things, no pun intended. And, we're like, there's collaboration even when, seemingly there's, I wouldn't say adversity, but like challenges and overlaps. And we're all kind of aligned to get all of this done. And we're figuring out insights from each other, even though we're experts in our own field. And those insights collaboratively add to a better overall system. And I see a lot of appetite for new types of solutions, and I see new appetite from existing and emerging solutions for different approaches that all of us are kind of promoting in different ways.
I was at ETC in Paris only in July, I think, so like 4 months ago. And like the criticism of intents at the time, to the point of being a meme, was like, oh, I haven't seen a definition of intents. Like, it's a word and I haven't seen a definition. Like, I think this week I've seen like 12 different definitions, like, but they all share things in common. Like, as you were saying, like, that's, I think, the reassuring thing. We're all thinking about the space like subtly differently, but there's a lot in the overlap that I think, nobody could possibly venture that there's no definition of intents anymore. That's tremendously like reassuring and makes me optimistic, I think, about the space. And just generally, like the amount of stuff that I think has been built in the last 4 months is phenomenal. So that's my takeaway.
This is a great point because in HCC the same we had a panel talking about what's an intent and how it is going to help. We ran a multiple feedback forum and put together a paper definition of intent and just published it. And I took the security, we work with a lot of security people, form verification people, so we just took their feedbacks and everything, how a partial order will form and what is the state paths and how the intents will be satisfied, what are the desirable property, things like not from a philosophical standpoint, but how the state transition will work. Try to put some contribution to that, like definition of intent from how can we make this more mechanized. So you bring more efficiency to the market. So that's really a key point. Thank you.
The question was, what's the takeaway from Devconnect?
Yeah.
I think earlier Stefan said in an earlier event, now intents feel real, and I think many share that sentiment now. The intents do start to feel real.
Intents are intense now.
Not anymore. No, no, they're being executed. I also feel we're so early. Like, there's so many open questions and there's so much design space. Like, we're really so early still. That would be the second thing. Yeah, block ravers, they throw the best parties.
Great.
Yeah. I guess sorry, about the takeaways related to intents, account abstraction, all this stuff. Like, I see that there is still like gas problem. Let's say for the mainnet, let's say for account abstractions. Like here we like one issue always care like gas efficiency, better price, this stuff. So like I feel like there is no for now the good answers for the gas overheads things. So and I see like. It looks like we would see maybe first solutions for the side chains, like where the gas problem is not so hard, and where the gas is cheap, so you can spend some gas for extra bytecode for execution. So it might be nice to see this. I mean, in the future that we have adoption not from the Ethereum, but for the side chains back to the Ethereum. It's like quite interesting idea, I guess. Also related to intent, as you said, like 12 different definitions, a lot of stuff, and for us also, would it be like a protocol, or like we thought maybe shouldn't be like a protocol or even like language, like I mean domain-specific language to describe DSL, not just define of the EEPs or whatever. It just maybe we would need some Solidity compiler for intent stuff. So that's what we have in our mind here. So and I see there is no, let's say, consensus about how we're gonna proceed. A very exciting again time to bring the ideas and see how it looks.
Would something like that would help players like you?
You mean like this language or
Like you said like something you can compile your expressions more generally communicatable for a large audience.
So you mean
you said DSL. You don't really need to invent a new DSL, but you can actually have some sort of a standard to propagate your messages with intent, so you can execute it much better.
Yes. So like because there is so different how it should look like, right? So instead of place it as an EEP standard like of account abstraction, there is the name of the methods. Here is the call data, just to have this as a form of language, not just as a form of standard. So the language where you have like operator, the user wants, let's say, token transfer, something like this. So express intent, what should be the state change or something like this. Maybe again we can get back to the EVM, what I expect the world should look like after you execute these transactions. So like we're at the place where even this direction might work. That is like quite also exciting for me.
Thank you.
So for me, the biggest take for Istanbul is the bull. No, the bull is coming. No, no. I feel like it's good that in general everyone has agreed and caught up to the realization that in one way or another, with account abstraction, intents, whatever delegated model, trading, execution, whatever we want to call it. The only way to reach the next set of billion users or whatever target we hit is really like abstracting from all the complexities, because in the end that's what you see in TradFi or in any like Web2 application. It's like I don't understand how any of the technology works. I just hit a button and it works, and you still have a lot of barriers in crypto of the pop-up from MetaMask is still not clear what you're signing. It's getting more and more clear, but it's still kind of complicated for someone that's outside of the space to understand it. So at least it's good to see like everyone working together or together but competing at the same time to simplify as much as possible the experience.
Thank you. So with that, we're going to wrap with one simple question. What do you think about credible neutrality in the current MEV tooling? I'm not asking about the supply chain. It's broken. So there's a lot of things are inside. So what do you think about the tooling side, the credible neutrality?
What tooling do you refer to?
Block building.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the big problem there is that the biggest block builders are not, most of the biggest block builders are not committed to being credibly neutral. There's one, Titan that's been, pushing the envelope there, but also they're not incented to do that. So it's not just that, hey, we gave them this tool and they're acting in a way that is not aligned. It's that we didn't really, combine their interests with, what the protocol's interests are in the full sense. And that's partly because we didn't know at the time, the research was that it was all, CFI, DeFi on top of block that's going to create this latency advantage that is going to kind of change the dynamism of block building, right? So now we know this. Now we can design systems and better tooling that can address these things. I would agree with Marcus in that we're very early. And I think the, Flashbots and the Foundation did a great job, making sure PBS was ready for the merge. And, what we got out of that was that validators can now be decentralized without having this block building overhead. So we solved that problem, which was the key problem, that there's low barriers to entry for validators, which are, ultimately what's decentralizing the, the consensus of the network. Okay, we got that piece done. Now we have this block building, credible neutrality, et cetera, problem. Now we're tackling that. Some of the people on the stage are tackling that. We're going to get to a place where we'll probably discover other problems that we're going to work on. But I believe these things take some time.
Yeah, I would say pretty much the same in that you can build all the tooling that you like, but so long as order flow remains private and behind closed doors, the best you can do is quantify it. That's the only thing you can say about it. That's how much of it there is. It's also kind of a little easy to label MEV, oh, this is toxic MEV, that. To me, that's kind of the easy way out. It's not the responsibility of people in the transaction supply chain to behave, in a way that's ethical, whatever your definition of ethical is. It's our responsibility to build systems and mechanisms that incentivize the behavior that we want to see.
Yeah, I would add to that. I agree with Simon that many of the problems that we now see downstream, centralization on the builder level, come because this value is there to be extracted, and then that value becomes a force for the centralization. And it's, I think, you're not thinking about it deeply enough, assuming that force will always be there. And I think many of the solutions that we have discussed today, including Essential and Cowswap, are actually doing a lot to reduce this number significantly. And I think that's really the place to innovate more, is that if we have expressions of intents, and if we have DSLs, and if we have UIs where users simply don't make those mistakes anymore, then MEV will go down by 2 orders of magnitude, and so will the pressure on centralization. So that is not all of the solution, but that's a big part of the solution, and it's in the responsibilities of the dApps, of the UIs, and of the intent layers to make sure that it's just safe to use blockchains. Safe meaning you don't expose any MEV, even if you don't know anything about the transaction supply chain. And today it's just unrealistic. You need to know so much in order to not get screwed and in order to not produce these incentives for block builders to centralize.
Is that goes to the open state problem? You need to know so much the route to get to somewhere, you want to bring it down. Is that what you're saying? That close to everything should be a swap?
No, I mean the user shouldn't need to know more than what he wants. That's the only thing the user should need to know. He shouldn't need to know about bonding curves, about the differences between their implementation, about the difference between an aggregator and an AMM. It should not matter. The user should only need to know what he wants, and not more.
And what is the incentive on the other side? The supply chain to cater them. okay, they don't have to know, but if they don't know, if they say that I want its amount of token, the liveness problem, right? So if the market is tanking, how do they get those tokens?
I
Or
think
selling
there's two
it?
questions in one. I think the first one is interesting. It's that how do you get the user to care, and that isn't very interesting. I think a lot of it is also based on values, right? We are very aligned, not just the builders but also the users of this ecosystem, and thankfully they do care. Like someone new can come along, like Cowswap can come along and can get a lot of the important trades because people care. And they care about the tech behind the solutions. But we're not going to have this advantage for long, right? Eventually, we're going to have users who don't want to put the effort in and understand, and until then, we need to have better systems.
And they have the secret weapon, right? When the trade executed, you get this move.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people
I
goes
love that
there.
move.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, thanks. I thought like not sounds like a short question, you know, like again, like a lot of words to say. I would just mention again that Flashbots, I think, do a great job here. That like there is a standards, let's say the user expose not the full transaction of the call data, expose only, let's say, hash of the transaction to build a block. Then they expose only transaction logs, like what the transfer was, but I won't say what actually where I did the transfers. So there is a lot of things here from, again, like Flashbots things and like organization like this. I mean, for me, positive move. Yeah. Yeah, basically that's it. That's it.
For me, I think it's a little bit what Simon said. What is credible neutrality? Like, it all boils down to your opinion, which is subjective. So it's very hard to force. And you can see a little bit this with Lido. Like, everyone's whining on Twitter on what Lido, but yet no one's building a competitor to Lido. I mean, there are, but it's like, build something better. And I feel like with builders, it's a little bit the same, Everyone cries, and sure, they're doing this and that. And don't get me wrong, like, of course, there needs to be this, like, social push or social movement around it. But at the same time, why don't you, instead of crying, go make a builder and, do it in the way you think and let the market decide everything? Isn't that the whole point of decentralization, that we get to choose?
Thank
Yeah,
you. So
I would just say, like, also like life is life. This is how how it goes here. And let's say if we are just try to do the best price for user, but not try to change what is right here. So I mean, try to express this better. But yeah, it's the state of the ecosystem, and we just all together with this, and all we can change here. I mean, someone can come and build this builder or whatever. Yeah.
right, so it's all sums up. Get back to building, and let's ship some cool shit. All right, guys.
Cool.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you
It's
for
great.
having us.
All right.